Hey there, folks. This is Renessa Bowling-Lane, and welcome to another conversation on creating your perfect work. If you follow me, you know that I am all about equipping you to discover, design, and get highly paid to do work that you love. Whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing your big idea to life. And today we're going to talk about that highly paid part. And I am so super excited to be sharing the platform with someone who's actually grown to be someone I adore in a really short period of time. And so I'm glad to be chatting with her because it's going to be so much fun, more than just the content, but she's just super awesome. So today I've got Robin Farmananfarmaian joining us today. And Robin is a professional speaker. She is an entrepreneur. She's an angel investor working on companies in cutting edge technology that's poised to impact 100 million people or more around the world. So the woman is bad. But she's also the author of a book titled The Thought Leader Formula: Strategically Leverage Your Expertise to Drive Business and Career Goals. And it's from that content that she's going to share how to help you get highly paid in your career business. So welcome, Robin. I'm so excited to have you.
I am so excited to talk to you. I feel like we've already bonded.
Yes, we have. So yeah. This is somebody that I can go out and have a margarita with, because all I know is like 4 drinks, a margarita, something else. I got like 4 of them, but I can go and have a really cool drink with her. But just let me say this. I'm a huge believer in Robin's message. And I have seen, because we're going to be talking about thought leadership today, just to be clear. And even if you don't know what that means yet, you're going to know, and you're going to know how it's going to impact your business. But I'm a huge believer in Robin's message because I've seen the value of thought leadership in my own business, in the growth of my own business. But I also see how much opportunity there is for me to leverage more and to grow even more. So if you want to get highly paid doing work that you love, becoming a thought leader in your subject of expertise is like critical. And so it doesn't matter if perfect work for you is a career, if it's a business, if you've got a message, if you're doing nonprofit, like none of that works. Everything that she's saying is going to add to your bottom line, your salary, your revenue, all of that. So get your pen and paper handy because these are going to be little gems and nuggets that you're going to want to make sure to keep. So first of all, first question, because this series is all about creating perfect work, I want our audience always to see, hear, and feel what perfect work looks like for other people. So how do you know, Robin, that the work that you're doing right now is the work you're supposed to be doing right now? Like what gives you, and it may not be the work you're doing forever and all that, but what gives you the certainty that this is right direction for you right now? Like, how do you know that?
Because I feel fulfilled. Right? Like I want to get out of bed every morning and actually work. And I look forward to my email, right? And so that's what it's really all about is, are you doing what you love?
Yeah. And you're going to learn as we talk, because I'm going to ask a lot about Robin's life and, her impact and why. You're going to see the connection between that kind of stuff. But how you feel when you get up in the morning, not that every day is a good day and an easy day, but there's innate knowing that, man, this is the mountain that I was born to dissolve. And it's my desire that everybody on this call listening in is able to create that for themselves. So what exactly is thought leadership? Like, what does it look like and how do you define it?
So it's really becoming a known expert in your particular area of expertise. Whether you are an executive, an entrepreneur, an engineer, a marketing professional, a lawyer, a doctor, it doesn't matter. It's really just being well known by your peers as somebody who is an expert in that area.
Okay.
And in terms of what it looks like, so is people are approaching you to write articles or publish your articles, or you're just writing books, or you're being asked to speak on stage, asked for your opinion, to join advisory boards, things like that.
Okay, got it. Why is it important? Again, because for many people, even as you said, being asked to speak, I can think half of the audience is like, not me, got nothing to say, right? So aside from what it takes to become a thought leader, why is it so important?
Because it really helps you drive your career, right? So if you are more well known for your brain and for your area of expertise, you have stronger negotiating power at work.
Yep.
You can potentially get promoted, because one of the problems is sometimes the people who are so busy doing all the heavy lifting in a corporation are the ones who are getting the least amount of credit. Right? Because they are so busy working, the people who are out there talking and networking are the ones that are being attributed to a company's success.
Yep.
And so just get yourself recognized for your work. And just that alone can really change the power dynamic for you in the workplace.
Yeah. It's funny because I actually was having a conversation with, it was a prospective client. And so we're sitting there, we're kind of talking about her issue. And one of the things that she said was that she'd had, you had those 2 promotion conversations, one usually in the middle of the year where they're kind of teeing you up. And then at the end of the year, this is where you'll either get promoted or not promoted. So in that interim review, they were saying that, yeah, you're doing a great job, so-and-so, but nobody knows you. And the problem that you have and you need to fix in the next 6 months is that the people who are making these decisions around promotion and next level, they need to know who you are, right? Thought leadership plays a role in that. And thought leadership is not about just networking and schmoozing and all that. That's not what it is. It's really being able to package your ideas and your opinions and your solutions and your fixes in a way that people are able to consume it, and you become more of a go-to person or an expert for that space. And there's lots of thought leaders who are incredibly introverted, who do not do the networking thing, who aren't out there and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't want you to misunderstand those 2 things, but thought leadership, that would have killed that visibility, feedback from her, like that would have nailed that to the cross for sure.
Yep.
But even in the nonprofit space, if you are an executive director or a director for a nonprofit, creating thought leadership around the industry or the space that nonprofit is trying to serve, that's going to attract more donors to you. That's going to attract more sponsors to you. As someone who's starting a new business, if you're a coach or you're a trainer, a facilitator, that kind of thing, a lot of times we're scratching, knocking on doors for clients, giving away stuff for free, just to be able to get some testimonials or what have you. If you've got thought leadership in place, people are sending you emails. They're knocking on your door saying, can you participate? Honestly, when I decided to pull together an interview series, to help people get highly paid doing work they love, I went looking for folks who were already talking about stuff. I didn't know Robin. I didn't even get an introduction. It was a total cold email, like, hey, saw your book. I'd love to chat with you. Right. And so, but it was because she was being a thought leader in this space, right?
Yep.
So, and thought leader has a lot to do with money, right? And the fact that people will pay a premium for what you do. And, I share oftentimes that in whatever you do, whether it's the work that you'll learn about Robin in a moment in the healthcare space and all that, whether it's the work she does, whether it's the work I do, whether it's work you do, if you're listening, there's some people who make a little bit of money at that. And there's some people who make a lot of bit of money. And oftentimes the difference between a little bit of money and a lot of bit of money is thought leadership and the perceived value of what you bring to the table. Fair?
Exactly.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about this, because before you started teaching about thought leadership, you actually went out and became a thought leader in your own space.
Yes.
And so share with us how you did that. Not even why yet, but how you, where did the idea even come from that you needed to do something different? And then how did you go about doing that within the healthcare space?
Sure. So I was working with a lot of speakers to begin with. And I just went home one day and I created a 5-year project plan for myself. I just looked at thought leadership and speaking and writing articles and writing books as a business. Mm-hmm. So I was no longer an individual. I was like, this is a business. And so I need to start with a project plan. I gave myself a budget. I gave myself a timeline. I gave myself deliverables. Mm-hmm. And what I started out with was hiring a PR firm for 6 months to help me get placed in the right journals, right? Mm-hmm. So it was, I was writing articles, or actually they helped write articles with me. So they'd jump on the phone, they'd interview me, package it up into a perfect article, and then submit it to Becker's Hospital Journal or Huffington Post or Forbes or whatever their contacts were at the time that was relevant for my audience. Mm-hmm. And then I took the next step and I hired a speaker coach and somebody to help me create that first keynote with the perfectly designed slides.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got myself on stage, right? So it was really just step by steps.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing I did just kind of happened. I really mapped it out. And I said, this is the kind of thing I need to do over the next, say, year or two.
Okay.
Really looking 5 years out.
Okay. So I'm gonna back it up a little bit, because I don't want anyone on the audience being afraid around, well, okay, well, I have to hire a speaker coach and then I've got to hire a PR firm. And so that was the space for the space that she was playing in at the level. We're going to back this up and we're going to unpack it so you can see how in your life, like literally now, you can be doing thought leadership kinds of things in a way that's going to elevate where you are in your space. So first of all, let's take the step back. Why did you decide that you needed to be a thought leader? Like, what's the story behind that, specifically in the healthcare space?
So it was a couple of reasons. First of all, I knew it would drive business for me because I do high-level business development, sales, and things like that. And so being able to get into the door of investors, getting in the door of like major pharma companies, because I was working on some early stage pharma and I needed to talk to the C-suite of some of these $90 billion companies, right? And so I knew that to get to them, being a thought leader would be a lot more helpful.
Yeah.
But then in addition, it was my solution for me too, because I was harassed and, sabotaged and pushed down in the workplace. And I realized early that you can't fight that through like normal channels, right? HR doesn't exist to help women. It's there to exist to really protect the company. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to change the game. And that's what I did. I said, if I became known for my expertise, men can't take credit for my work anymore because my work was constantly being stolen. No one can push me down. And let me tell you, it worked bigger than my wildest dreams. The day my first book published, The Patient as CEO, was like turning a light switch. It was incredible. And nobody has been able to steal my work or even tried. Right. Since then, no one's pushed me down.
There's a couple things that I take out of that story. One, particularly if there's folks who are listening and you're in the sales space, it's hard, especially if you're doing it cold or, something like that. It's hard to get people's attention, and two, get on their calendars. But when you are somebody that somebody should know, and that someone should want to be associated with, or that they think you're associated with someone they would want to be associated with, it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to get into the door and be able to pitch your product or your service or whatever the case may be. So what she's saying on the sales front is critical. The other piece of this, though, you are in the healthcare space, and when you decided to start becoming a thought leader, part of that was this book that you wanted to write. And you decided, hey, I'm going to write this book. Some people write books because, man, there's just something on my heart. I want to put it out there. I want to help people, blah, blah, blah. And that's awesome. And then it does great things or whatever. Other of us write books because we want to sell what it is that we have to offer, or we want to, you want to sell, right? So when I wrote Fast Lane, Wrong Direction, Insider Secrets to Redesign Your Success, it was really meant so that I could speak about the concept of being in the fast lane, going in the wrong direction in your careers. And because of that, there were companies who were willing to bring me in to talk to their folks as a result of that, right? So you decided to write The Patient as the CEO. Why did you write that book specifically? And I ask this question because in the healthcare space, she could have written all kinds of books, right? But she wrote this particular book for a reason. Why did you choose that topic? And what did that have to do with your own personal life?
So what it comes down to is you need a solid foundation for your thought leadership platform. And for me, that comes down to an equation. It is the combination of your why and your fundamental truth, right? And they need to really intersect with each other. We all have many whys. We all have many fundamental truths, meaning something you believe that most people in the world may not believe or may not know about yet. And so for me, I really wanted to write a tech book on AI, robotics, sensors, VR, drones, all of that. But I had to do it from my why point of view. And for me, I'm a severe chronic disease patient. At 16, I was misdiagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And all told, I've had 43 hospitalizations, 6 major surgeries, and 3 organs removed.
Wow.
And so that was my why, because I took control of my own healthcare in my 20s, and I became the CEO of my own healthcare team. Mm-hmm. And so I called the book The Patient as CEO, and it talks about all of the technologies that really empower people to do what I did all those years ago.
Mm-hmm. This is critical, because for a lot of us, when we think about the idea of thought leadership, it can be scary because we think, well, I don't know enough, or who am I? Or I've only been in my career 10 years or 15 years, or I'm just starting my business. What do I have to say that people are going to want to hear? Yep. And oftentimes thought leadership starts with the very things that impact you as an individual, because yours, and I'll share this often when it comes to finding your sweet spot. There's 4 things. What do I do best? What do I enjoy most? What's my story? And what's the market willing to pay for? What Robin's talking about is the story bit. Right? She leveraged her story as the cornerstone for her thought leadership. It was the cornerstone of her writing a book. It was the cornerstone of many of the talks and things I'm sure that you gave when you were starting to get on stages and all of that. And I mean, who would not want to hear from somebody who's had 43 operations? Was it 43? No. It was 43 hospitalizations, 6 operations, and 3 freaking organs removed.
Yep.
What do you have to say? Like that right there already, makes her an expert and a thought leader in whatever that problem is. Yep. And so as you're thinking about your career, whatever it is, whatever your role happens to be, you may have had certain experiences in that role that might have shaped how you've grown. You may have had certain experiences in your role that shape the solutions that you've come up with. Right? So if you're an HR person and you're, doing talent development or whatever for a company, well, the different experiences that you've had as an employee in other companies could influence what your perspective happens to be on what a great talent development culture should be like. Yep. That opinion is your thought leadership. And it doesn't have to be this book that gets sold at Barnes and Noble or Amazon. It could literally be an article that you write and you submit to the SHRM, Society of Human Resources and Management, because they're all looking for content. Or you might put it on a blog, or you might put it someplace where other folks in the talent development space are. You know what happens with that thought leadership? Somebody reads it and they're like, oh, we'd love for you to speak on our panel of blah, 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 blah. Yep. Or you can take that idea, that very same idea, and pitch it to a conference that you're going to attend. Like yep. I just came from this conference, Diversity Women's Business and something conference. It's a really great conference. Diversity Women in Business and Leadership Conference. But it's a great conference. Anyway, I spoke at that conference, but there were so many women there who were attendees who were literally working their jobs from all these great companies doing their thing, that when I sat there and talked to them, they had perspectives that they easily could have been doing a breakout session or whatever else to be known, right? And so that's what thought leadership is. It's not this big thing that somebody has to go and hire a PR firm and this and that. Like there's lots of those strategies that make sense depending on how big you want to go. But we're just talking about right now, what's going to make it such that a company wants to hire you for $175,000 instead of $145,000. It could be the fact that you spoke at XYZ conference about why, and they're like, man, this one right here, she'll come in and she'll change the dial for us. Does that make sense? Okay. So, so story's important. I just want to hit that home. I got all kinds of questions and stuff for her. So you mentioned in your book, The Thought Leadership Formula, that every job you've ever had was created and built around your personality. Like you've never once applied for a role, like going online, searching to see what's on Indeed.com, and that's most people's dream, folks that are listening to this conversation. Why did that happen for you?
Well, it's twofold. First of all, I'm an entrepreneur. So a lot of the companies I come on board, they just didn't exist beforehand. So I have that opportunity to create the perfect role for myself, no matter where I'm going. But secondly, it's even in established companies, they came to me and they're just like, what do you want to do? What are you good at? We want you to work for us because we can see what you do on stage and we see what you write about and we think you'd be a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that power of being a thought leader that really allows me to just write my own job descriptions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I bring this up because it's not just in the entrepreneurial space that this happens, right? There is another interview, and I highly recommend that you guys listen to it. I'm going to be interviewing Madelyn, and she is the host and creator of the Self-Made Millennial YouTube channel. And her stuff is awesome. It's great. She's going to be talking about how to leverage LinkedIn to build your thought leadership. So these two interviews dovetail so perfectly. But here's the thing about Madelyn. Madelyn works a full-time gig. Like, she works for a company, and she's doing talent development and all of that. So she's a leading authority in talent development. Mm-hmm. She's not just this entrepreneur who's out there on her own doing her thing. She's working for a company. However, she's taking the stuff that she does for these organizations and she's packaging it as her own thought leadership. And now she's got a great, huge following. She's putting out tremendous amount of value. But don't you know that if she should choose to up and this company's no longer working for me, if she chose to go someplace else, you better believe that they would allow her to create her own job description. Why? Because there's so much more value that she's putting out into the marketplace beyond just what the little, what the company's saying we want of you, that they would say to her, hey, tell us what you want to do. Like, tell us how you can help us. And so thought leadership and just really having a brand and a point of view of your own is really the secret sauce to getting highly paid no matter what it is that you want to do. Another benefit to this, you talk in your book about having multiple streams of income. And why do you believe that that's important? And how does it relate to thought leadership?
So I believe it's important purely because the future of work is not guaranteed. We are seeing a massive shift in technology and changing what people are doing on a daily basis. Like, gone are the years where, like our parents, they'd go to college and then they'd work in the same job for 30 years. They'd have a pension, a retirement, and, all good. That doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And so really knowing that your job, even if you're working for a Fortune 100, could suddenly be gone the next day because of downsizing or whatever, it provides a way for you to like press on a lever almost. So I think about these as like, say you have 5 different revenue streams. One brings in hundreds, one brings in thousands, one's your salary, mm-hmm. one, comes and goes. You just press on those levers when you need them, right? They're already set up for you. And so if you have a little bit of consulting work on the side, then maybe you can work harder at that if you suddenly lose your day job, mm-hmm. right? But it's ready for you to go. It's there ready.
And what's great about that is that you're already doing the work. Like, you already know the stuff. Yep. And it just becomes, how do I package what I already know in a way that the market is willing to pay me differently for it? Yep. I have a past client, and she does really great work in the higher ed space. And so when we first started working together, she was sorely underpaid for what it is that she did. Like, she has a PhD. The girl's bad. Yeah. But look at what she was being paid in terms of salary. It wasn't there. So we worked through that to make sure that she was elevated and she got to a 6-figure space. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, though, because she started to leverage her thought leadership, she was starting to get asked to speak on panels. So all those places where she was the attendee, getting paid to go and travel and sit and learn from other people, she was then being invited to speak on that or to give a breakout about, well, how do you do X, Y, and Z, and so on. So she actually really became a thought leader in her space in a way that she was not leveraging. Then she ended up getting asked by another university to come and teach their staff and faculty on whatever it is that she was already doing. And so we negotiated her first, contract. Like, it was a consulting contract. They were like, tell us how much you want us to pay you to do this, right? Yep. And so so she was, fired up about that. But the bottom line is, now she was getting paid to go and help other organizations with the stuff that she was knew like the back of her hand. And if she wanted to do that as another stream of income, she totally could have positioned her and packaged herself and pitched that out and wash, rinse, repeat. So for those of you who are thinking about, how do I do work that I love? And how do I, begin to get highly paid for it? It's not just about getting the next promotion. Thought leadership helps you with that, but it's also what are other ways that I might be able to package what I do. Doesn't mean I have to be an entrepreneur, but it does mean that I can start getting paid for people picking my daggone brain all day, for stuff that I know how to do, right?
Yes.
So in one of your earlier chapters of the book, you talk about risk, Robin, and that everything worth doing has risk. When it comes to taking the leap to create work we love, we all have factors, right, in our life that make the decision scary. How do you advise women that are listening to you to think about risk when associated with creating work that they love?
So it's always a risk when you put yourself out there, right? So you write an article, you don't know how it's going to be received, and you put it out there, and anytime you do that, you're going to be judged, right? And that is a risk you are taking. So really understanding how to mitigate risk, right? So whether that in this particular very small scenario, you bring on a few friends to give you feedback before you publish it, right? That's a way of mitigating some of that risk, right? And that's a free thing that you could do. But, anytime you step on stage, like whenever I step out on stage, and sometimes it's before like 4,000 or 5,000 people, that is a massive risk because I could easily fail. I'm up there for 60 minutes and I've got to hold the attention of 4,000 people. That is a huge risk. So I learned how to mitigate that. And the way I mitigate that is I practice, if it's a 1 hour talk, I practice that 10 times in a row until I can't get it wrong. And so always learning that where's the risk and how do you mitigate that?
Yeah. And I think part of it also is being willing to be okay with whatever the risk happens to be, right? Because I can, and I'm like you, I will practice that thing and nail it. I'm like, nope, 100 times, like we're going back. But ultimately something can happen and it still doesn't come off perfectly. And I've got to be ready to roll. I just got to be willing to roll, and I've got to be willing to roll with the imperfection. And so if you are looking to be a thought leader in your space, I wouldn't even say half the battle, 80% of the win is just being willing to show up. Because if you pay attention to folks out there who are considered influencers, whether it's kind of more the lifestyle, social media kind of influencers who may be doing wacky things and, whatever, or people who are thought leaders that are in a much more kind of professional, setting.
Intellectual space.
Intellectual space. Doesn't really matter. Some of those people out there, you're looking like, are you kidding me? Like, are you for real? But here's the deal. This is a quote that's attributed to Larry Winget, who's a motivational speaker and an author. He says, you know what? My ugly book cover is better than the book cover you don't have. And so just getting out there and putting yourself out there and being willing to do the daggone thing, that's like 80% of the win. And that's why sometimes we're looking at folks who we think, I don't even know how they got up there. Why? They put their name in the hat.
They did.
And the opportunity presented themselves. And maybe they were half ready, 60% ready, 70% ready. But guess what? The opportunity they have and that they're capitalizing on is the better than the one that we don't have, right? And so that's a huge piece when it comes to thought leadership. Some people, they're going to love your work. Some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to support you. Some people are going to criticize you. And there's a part of you that has to be willing to be okay with that, because the payment on the other side, whether it's promotion, salary, more clients, customers, higher revenue, is worth it. Fair? Something that you talk about that I think is really interesting is that when you don't feel like you're fully educated as a thought leader in your area of focus, you talk about hacking the system, right? And for a lot of us, there's always this imposter syndrome, like I'm not enough, I don't feel like I'm enough, I don't feel like I'm ready. Part of that's imposter syndrome. And then there may be a piece of it is true. Like there's a gap. You need to learn X, or you need to figure out Y. Tell us about hacking the system and what that means.
So I hacked my education after my undergrad degree. I got a BS in management, and I said, okay, well, I don't find it smart in my, especially because I was a chronic disease patient, to go get an MBA or an MS or a PhD. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to hack it. I went to some of the top schools, but just took their classes at continuing education, like night classes or their executive education. Night classes at Stanford University, using the same exact professors that they use during the day, are hundreds of dollars a class. Yeah. $300, $400. So I took classes at Harvard, Stanford, Wellesley, Dartmouth, Berkeley, Golden Gate, and Boston University. And the only one I paid for a degree was Boston University. The rest of them, I mean, they cost $50,000 to $150,000 for a year or two, and I paid hundreds. And I got a very similar education. What it is that when you're paying to be a matriculated student, you are paying for that degree. You're paying for a piece of paper. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't want the MBA or a PhD, so I'm just going to put in the work myself, hire these Stanford professors or take online courses with Berkeley. Just don't even worry about the credits, because there is no credits or grade. I'm learning so that I know more things about my area of expertise.
Yeah, I think that's critical. Here's the deal. The marketplace does not pay for, the marketplace doesn't pay for your passion. So it doesn't matter if you're passionate about something, then you're not going to get promoted for that. You're not going to get a client for that. The marketplace doesn't pay for your skill necessarily. Just because you know how to code doesn't mean that you're going to be the one that gets the next thing, right? Yes. And there are a lot of people, their heads down, they're working hard, and they're wondering, why am I not being elevated? Or I've got all these modalities as a coach, why don't I have any clients? Or, my product's not going anywhere. It has nothing to do with your skill oftentimes. It has everything to do with, do I know what's required to be able to get the market to move, right? Yep. So if, like for what Robin was saying, if there were critical skills that you lack that the market needs from you, go figure out how to get that skill. But another way to hack the system is, your craft is one thing, building the business of your craft is totally different.
Yes.
If you want to be a thought leader in whatever your career is or your business, but you don't have great writing skills or, communicating skills in that way, that's the hack you want to go fix. Like, and it's not about how do I write a journal or, but you might want to say, well, how do I get copywriting skills? Like, how do I write a headline on a blog that somebody's going to want to pick up? How do I write a headline, a subject line for an article that if I submit it, they're going to click open and be like, oh my gosh, this is interesting.
Yep.
Go learn how to do that. That's a hack, because that opens the door for money, right?
Yep.
If you want to be a thought leader and you want to be on panels and you want to speak, but you're not comfortable, being able to talk in sound bites, go figure out how to do that, and learn how to do that piece and find the things that are going to allow you to elevate, because it's not always the professional skill that got you here. To be a thought leader, it's going to require a skill set that's usually outside of your craft, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's the marketing department of a business. That's what thought leadership is. It's the marketing department.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yep.
And so if I'm not a great networker, but I am a great communicator by writing, and I can write an article or whatever, and I write an article that then gets posted to my intranet in my company, and the CEO happens to see it, or the executive director for my particular department happens to see it, I didn't have to network because my thought leadership opened the door for me, right? Yep. And so those are the kinds of ways that you can begin to think about that. Getting into forums and giving your ideas and giving your opinions, just being heard in that way. There's lots of ways that are comfortable that allow you to step up and distinguish yourself with your ideas. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. You talk about something that I think is really, really interesting. You say that people don't pay for content, they pay for packaging. And so since we're talking about thought leadership, what do you mean by that?
So what you can do is essentially, and this is like a page from Gary Vee, like he does this kind of thing. So say you write a book, and he does it with videos and things like that, but you write a book, you don't have to do anything else on your content for the next 2 or 3 years. From a book, you pull out 15 to 20 articles. You can pull out 3 different keynotes. You write it once and it is all done. And so it's all about the packaging of that. The book is going to cost someone $10 for an ebook, but the articles that you pull out exact same content and you post on Medium or you post on LinkedIn is free. What they are doing is they're paying for that book. For an online class, what you are doing is paying for all of those videos to be in one place versus just looking on YouTube and finding them yourself for free, right? It's packaging up the ideas in a certain way that's consumable for the person who's trying to learn the craft.
Yeah, it's and it might seem like an esoteric idea, right? But this is really critical for those of you who are thinking about business. Because when I sit down with clients and folks who, particularly service-based businesses, like if it's a product, it's a little bit different, but even with product, it's about bundling. Like you could bundle a couple of things on a product and now it's worth a whole lot more than individually. So there's ways to think about it from a product space, but I'm gonna speak primarily to like information and service-based and that kind of thing. A lot of times if you're a service-based entrepreneur, you end up trading your time for dollars, right? So I was having a conversation with a client and she was like, oh, well, I'm trying to put together a proposal for, this potential client. And I was going to give her X, thousand for like 8 hours of time and then maybe Y thousand for XYZ thousands of time. And at the end of the day, that prospect is going to be looking at her like, so I'm paying you X dollars an hour, right? And when people are looking at you from an X dollars an hour perspective, that's always a very difficult sell because they're then determining, are you worth $350 an hour or $75 an hour or $500 an hour or whatever. When it comes to this idea of packaging, it's understanding what problem does your client want you to solve? Yes. And then sell the outcome. Like, this is what I'm going to fix this problem for you, and I'm going to fix that problem for you, and I'm going to fix this third problem for you. And for all of that, it's only $6,500 or $10,000 or whatever it is that you choose to charge. Yep. It doesn't matter if it takes you 2 months to fix that problem or 2 days to fix that problem. The client wants you to fix the problem. And so when we start to think about thought leadership, in thought leadership, it puts you in a position where you can begin to solve people's problems. And 9 times out of 10, you can solve that problem far faster for them than they can for you, right? So if a plumber comes, they're going to charge me $150 for literally like 6 minutes of time to snake my toilet. And they're like, thank you very much. I didn't pay him $150 an hour. I paid him $150 to snake my toilet, right? Yes. And so as a thought leader, when you begin to create thought leadership, people then want you to fix their problem. And they're willing to pay whatever you're going to charge because they know you can come and fix their problem. You can come in and fix that dysfunctional team. You can come in and totally revamp their donor, problems. You can come in and help them to find a job or whatever the outcome is. The thought leadership puts you in a completely different category because now, similar to what Robin was saying, they're paying for the package that you have to offer. Plus all the other ways in which you can package your content and parse it and all those other kinds of things in which we're saying. Does that make sense? I hope y'all are getting this because what she's saying is like gold. Gold. I'm literally even learning because even as you said about the book, that's an area that I did not take full advantage of. Like I wrote a book, great book, got great, people were really inspired by it and changed and transformed. It's awesome. But now I'm sitting here like, what am I going to write? What article can I write? What content can I write? She's just saying, take every one of those pieces of your book and write an article, repurpose that stuff. And I've thought about that and I've done it in my mind, but I haven't executed on that. And so, I'm learning as y'all are learning.
Oh, and you can hire virtual assistants to do that for you.
Yeah.
Lots of companies, that's like a standard thing for a marketing company or a virtual assistant is they pull articles out of people's books. Yeah. That's like a thing.
Yeah. I'm gonna find somebody that does that thing well.
Exactly.
Start doing that. So that's another piece of that. We're going to talk a little bit about, do I even want to hit it? Do we have time? No, we're going to hit this last question. I want you to tell me a little bit about the time, money, and capital that's required to become a thought leader. Because I think that's really important to hear. A lot of times people see folks and their names are in lights and all that, and you think it happened overnight, and it didn't. and we underestimate how much time, money, and capital is required. It's not an exorbitant amount. Like, people aren't trying to get on stages in front of thousands of people like you are necessarily. But tell us a little bit about how folks should think about time, money, or capital when it comes to thought leadership.
Sure. So you need to think about this as a business. You are no longer, a brand is a business, right? You are no longer an individual. Businesses take time, money, and effort to actually build. So you've got to think of a thought leader journey from 1 to 3 years. Like, that is a timeline. You're not going to have huge ROI. You're going to have some ROI absolutely right away. But, you know, some of the huge ROI may not come for like 2 or 3 or 4 years, right? And in terms of my own journey, yes. So, I mean, I was gunning for being that keynote speaker in front of 4,000 people. And so for the first 3 years of my thought leader journey, I invested $75,000. And that was hiring speaker coaches, hiring high-end designers for my slide deck, hiring Scribe Media to help me with my book, hiring a marketing company, hiring a PR company. And that's what came up to the 75K. But that was over 3 years. And that was because I wanted to go really big. And and the people I was competing against were already $20,000 a keynote speakers. For people, if you don't want to go, you know, you don't have to go down the professional speaker route, I would say start to think about $10,000 to $30,000 to invest over a 3-year period, which is not, you know, if you're only doing 10,000 over 3 years, that's not that much. But, you know, maybe your money is going to be best spent on, you know, a marketing company for 3 months, or maybe it's best spent on hiring an editor for a book for yourself because you don't want to, you know, do the polishing of the writing, whatever that is. But you really need to think about having an actual budget.
And I think this is critical. And I know that for some listening, those numbers are scary, right? So let's keep those things in perspective. Robin is a professional speaker. Like, that was the goal. She's like, I want to be out there and I want to be commanding $20,000 keynote, you know, addresses. So she's telling you, this is what it took for me to get there to that level. And that's important to hear, because if you want to be a $20,000 keynote person, there may be some things that you similarly need to do, whether it's 75K or not, or whether you've got to hire out for some support. There's a big difference between there and where someone else may want to be at a $5,000, you know, workshop, or $7,500, you know, session at a company or whatnot. But it's understanding that you still have to invest in being able to grow. You've got to invest in learning, how do I leverage my thought leadership? You've got to invest in learning, what types of articles do people even want to hear or see? You know, those are investments that you begin to make. On the other side of it, you know, someone had said this. I think it actually was a lady on the People's Court. I'm about to make this. I thought it was it was a great idea, but I think it came off at the People's Court. Judge Madelyn on the People's Court. She said something like, and I'm probably going to get it wrong. She says, if you want something fast and cheap, it won't be good. If you want it fast and good, it won't be cheap. And then if you want it, I forgot. There's a third piece there. But the whole point is that there's this like triad, and there are trade-offs.
Yep.
So if you want to do something, and let's assume we're all going to do it well, but if you want to do something fast and you want to do it well as it relates to thought leadership, it's not going to be cheap. Robin's given you real numbers. Like, she hired out people who were really, really great at that stuff. And it's because that she was willing to do good and she wanted to do it relatively fast. It was not cheap. Now, if you don't want to spend that much money, it may take you more time to do it, because you're going to have to do it slower. That's fine. Like, everybody's at a different space. And so you may do it more slowly, but you can't be expecting to turn around and flip around and be able to do all this kind of stuff real quick, fast, in a hurry if you're doing it all yourself. When I first started my business, I was the billing person and the web designer and the assistant and that took time because I didn't have as much capital, right? And so you can create work you love, but it's having a realistic expectation of, okay, what sacrifice do I need to make? Now, if I want to do this faster, then I need to be willing to pay for speed. And there's some of us, man, I want to create work I love, but I'm sitting here having all these lunch and learn conversations with my mentor over coffee. that's not going to get you clear. That's not going to get you moving. That's not going to get you doing the career or the business that you want to do. You need to hire that out, find somebody who can bam, 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 figure this out for you, figure out your profit path and move, right? So there's something to be said about that. So for those of you who work in, what's great about working is that you have a business, right? That you can kind of fuel. You have an income that you can begin to fuel into your thought leadership, right?
Yep.
And so that becomes a really great way of being able to leverage and coming out with that plan. But what I loved about you, Robin, is that you had a plan for it and you thought it through and you were consistently working against it. I ain't have a plan. It's just kind of like, okay, I'll do this today, because I didn't really understand it. So I think it's so awesome that people are able to hear from you and say that, man, this really is a business. Like, I should think about this and strategize this if I want to be the go-to person in my career, in my industry or whatnot. I want to be the people that everybody wants to hire. This is the way to be able to do that. What are simple ways? So let's take it from the 75,000 foot level and give these folks like, hey, if I'm Joe Blow, Susie Q, we're talking about women, if I'm Susie Q and I'm in a company and I may be a director or something, but I really have dreams of like taking this higher. How can I leverage thought leadership, not as this big grand speaker, but what are things that I can do right now that allow me to enter into that space and be seen and distinguished?
I would say publish one article a month. Like, that's small, it's easy to do. And I know some of you out there are like, oh wait, no, I've never written an article. I have to tell you, so I was a terrified and terrible writer when I first started. And it is a skill that you build up. And so those early stages, you can bring on help. There are companies like Scripted. I think it's on a subscription model. And then for like $60 or like $80 an article, they write an article in your voice based on your content. So you can give them, like, say you need an article on virtual reality. You can say, talk about virtual reality and healthcare, stroke rehabilitation, and gaming. And like, they'll come back to you with a 500-word article in a week on that particular subject, right? So if you don't want to be the one who writes it starting out, this is your content. You're not the expert writer, you're the expert in the content. And that's a difference. And so that's a very small investment you can make, which would take almost no time from you, right? And you can get, line up 6 articles to publish once every month on the first Monday of the month.
Yeah. And even within your company, if there's an intranet and they have content that's posted in your company, go and contribute to those conversations. And you don't even actually have to, it's always great if you're the author of whatever, or you're the catalyst for whatever that conversation happens to be. But even if you're not, be the one that comments on that stuff. Like, oh, if there's some conversation going on within your company that is getting visibility and gaining visibility, put your name in the hat with an idea, solution, thought, meaningful contribution to that conversation, especially if other people around the organization are having that conversation. Now you're in the game and it's like, oh man, that was great. What she said, ditto. Now people begin to associate you with thought leadership. And that's not something you have to pay for, just it's something that you have to get in the game and be about, right? And so for all these places that you read articles and that you're the one consuming and all that kind of stuff, find a way. They're oftentimes looking for guest contributors. They're looking for people who have, like, they need content. And your voice is so unique and different, and you have something that's different that the market needs to hear. And so my hope from this conversation that it's just about stepping up and recognizing that you've got something different to bring into your space and being willing to be an authority on you and the things that impact you as it relates to your career or your business, because other people will also begin to gravitate towards all the things that you say as well. And so as we prepare to close out, before we even close out, in the spirit of generosity, Robin has a special gift for everyone that's listening in, so that you'll get access and be able to really kind of consume some of the things that she shared in this interview. So I'm going to turn it to you to share with folks, what are they able to get access from you, and then I'll tell them how they can get it.
So it's all about packaging up that content. And so what I've done is I've created a workbook for everybody, and all it is it's taking out the action items from my actual book, the Thought Leader Formula, which you have to pay for. And instead, I'm pulling out all that information and I put it into a short workbook for you so that you have all of the exact action steps that you need to take over the next year to really build up your thought leadership. So you don't even have to spend any money. I'm just taking the content and I repackaged it for you, and it's my gift for you guys.
No, this is awesome. This is really, really awesome. And it's a step-by-step blueprint on how to begin to think about it. And just you'll see how doable it is, just how doable it is. And so in closing, there's something that Robin said in her book that I think was awesome. She says, she said, some people think of thought leadership as being discovered, like an actor or musician, rather than building it like a business with a strategy and a brand.
Yes.
And here's the thing, you're going to work hard anyway. Everyone on this call, you are awesome at what you do. You're going to be burning the midnight oil at times. You're going to be delivering and over-delivering for your company, for your customer, or whatnot. Why not put yourself in a position where you get to take a shortcut to the top? And that shortcut to the top, whether it be in position or just in money and payment and all of that, is thought leadership. And so begin to consider this as a vehicle that's worth investing in terms of strategy and learning how to do it and learning what works for you. Because for some of you, it might be writing and articles. For some of you, you love to get on a video and talk about stuff and give your ideas. For other people, thought leadership can take so many different forms. Like, you don't have to be on stage in front of thousands of people, but you do have to get your voice heard.
Yes.
And that's going to be the thing that catapults you and distinguishes you from anybody else in your space. And so my hope is that you have been blessed by this conversation, inspired, challenged, all that good stuff. And so on behalf of Robin and myself, we want to wish you well and have a fantastic day. And we'll see you on the next conversation. All righty? Bye-bye.
Bye.